Welcome to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast, the official podcast of Ryan Johnson Ministries. This podcast was created for the purpose of equipping others for the advancement of the kingdom of God. We hope that you enjoy this episode and encourage you to subscribe to the Blacksmith Chronicles today. For more information about Ryan Johnson Ministries, please visit www.ryanjohnson.us or email us directly at info@ryanjohnson.us.
Hey guys, welcome to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast. This week, I am very honored and excited to welcome a guest who is not only just a minister of God, not only a husband, not only a father, an expert of many things, according to how you look at it, but one of my closest friends in this world. We have a very unique background story of how our families really paved the way for us many years ago. But nevertheless, I want to welcome my good friend, my brother in Christ, pastor, prophet, author, teacher, you name it, jack of all trades, Mr. Jason Armstrong. Jason, thanks so much for joining the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast.
Honor, Ryan. It's always an honor. Honor is the first thing. I was like, man, I'm already excited just to hop in. So, yeah, man, thanks for having me on. Again, I'm super excited to be talking with you today.
And it literally is kind of funny for those that may not know. We are like 3 doors down from one another.
Right. Full disclosure.
Yeah, we're in the midst of this, and we're recording, but it's way we can get both of us on video at the same time and recording. So for those that are listening to that, we're very close in relation as far as distance wise, but we're separate for the purpose of this. But I wanted to bring Jason on for just a moment. I'm going to have him elaborate and share a little bit about him. For those that may not be familiar with Jason, he's been a guest of the podcast a couple of times before. But for those that aren't familiar with you and what you do, kind of give us a background of who Jason Armstrong is.
Yeah. As you said earlier, I'm the associate pastor here at Summit Church in the beautiful Smoky Mountains of Pigeon Forge. I've been here for about as an associate pastor anyway, been here for about 2 years, coming up on 3, I think. And also founder of Remnant Fire Ministries, as well as the Remnant Voice podcast. My wife and I also co-lead the Tennessee, we're state leaders for Tennessee for the Heartland Apostolic Prayer Network. And you can check more on that at hapn.us. It's a strategic prayer network for the state. So,
yeah, and that's just a good reminder for everybody too, that the church that my family and I are a part of, Summit Church here in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, Jason is the associate pastor. Our offices are right down from one another. I am not technically on staff per se here at Summit, even though my office is here in the church building itself. I'm part of Life Changers Outreach, but what I do for Summit is Jason and I both have the opportunity to teach at the Summit School of Ministry, which is an online campus and an on-site campus. Jason handles year 1, I do year 2. So that's a unique thing that we get to continue to co-labor in. And aside from all of his responsibilities as associate pastor, from time to time, I get to minister from the pulpit at Summit, but we get to receive from him and Pastor Sandra Roach and many others that are part of the ministry here at Summit. So we are a vacation hub. So I'll go ahead and give a little bit of a shameless plug. If you're ever in the Great Smoky Mountains, make sure on Sunday morning or Wednesday night to come be a part of what's happening here at Summit Church, which is why I really wanted to bring Jason on to be a part of the podcast, because there is something that we're doing strategically here at the church and has been going on for a while, but it's shifted and hit another gear. And it really opens up an opportunity for us to expound on something in the realm of stewarding prophetic words, that we steward prophetic words that are spoken. There are a lot of ministries, a lot of individuals who have received prophetic words, whether it was as an individual, you received something, or a congregation received a word. One of the things that we do a lot of times is take that word, put it on a shelf and say, we'll talk about it later. We'll bring it out. And 9 out of 10 times, I'd say we forget about those words. We fail to remember what those were. And so there comes this cultivation process. And what's happening here at Summit, we have corporate prayer on Tuesday nights. And the past couple of weeks, we really felt like there was an urgency to get those prophetic words that have been spoken over Summit, over the region, and everything that, is a part of Summit. And that includes our outreach ministries, that includes student ministry, children's ministry, the whole facet, and really pray into those words, but not fail to remember those words, and much more. So with Jason being the associate pastor and also being a prophet, I wanted to bring him on, and I wanted to pick his brain, and let's talk about stewarding prophetic words. So here's the first thing I want to ask you, Jason. I know thinking here with Summit, but let's think bigger picture, just in general. Why is it vital for men and women of God to continually bring back prophetic words into remembrance?
Yeah, it's number one. I mean, it's a way to honor the Lord, ultimately. I mean, he said that we are putting value that what he said, that this is the voice of God. We're valuing and honoring what he said. We're not treating the things that he said as common. And so when he releases a word or something to us, and we grab a hold of that, it's very important to lift those things back up to him, saying, Lord, your word says this, you said this. And it's showing that we have, in some measure, and I'll talk maybe more about this a little bit later, but that we've come into agreement, we've accepted it as the voice of the Lord concerning the destiny or whatever on a person or a place or a ministry, whatever. And it's not that he needs reminding necessarily, because he's all knowing, right? But it's our way to co-labor with what he said, saying, look, we receive what you said, we value what you said was good, and here it is as an offering back up unto you. Just like Hannah, she birthed a Samuel, right? And she was barren, and the Lord, notice that the Lord had closed her womb, which that's, again, we can whole nother teaching there. The Lord had closed her womb, and she said, Lord, if you do this, then I will give it back to you. And as Samuel was birthed, what did she do? She gave it back, gave Samuel back to him, lent him back unto the Lord, as a fulfillment of the word, and even as a memorial unto him. And so the Lord has all kinds of scriptures about memorials and landmarks and all those things. And those are places, basically they're places of agreement. Memorial is a place of agreement that I've said yes to what the Lord said, and I'm using that memorial as an offering of prayer, which becomes like incense in the bowls of heavens. So that's a little bit on the memorial part.
Why do you think, when we talk about doing things like this with prophetic words, why do you think we fail to do so?
Oh, man, it's part of just human nature. Human nature, I think, ultimately is just, our flesh just gets lazy, and that's the quickest one there. Our flesh gets lazy. Another one may be just bad teaching, that we believe like, well, if the Lord just said it, then, it's going to happen. There's some things that are unconditional prophecies. There's others that are conditional prophecies, that the Lord is, the Lord is going to come back the same way that he left and put his foot down on the Mount of Olives. That's undeniable. That's going to happen, but whether you step into, this nation or that nation, based off of a prophetic word and a leaning or whatever, that's going to be dependent on you co-laboring with that thing just as much as it is. It's just going to happen, and you don't even have if the Lord says, I'm going to send you to the nations, and you get a prophecy saying, I'm going to send you to the nations, yet you don't have a passport. Come on. Seriously, those are just the practical things that we got to do. It's like, well, the Lord said he's going to send me to the nations, right? And so we're going to violate all the laws to get there, but he's going to send me to the nations. No, there's a co-laboring aspect that you've got to do. Go get your passport. That's an act of faith, and that's an act of agreement that you're saying yes to the Lord concerning the word over your life. And it may be 20 years before you actually go to a nation, because there's process, but these things fail because, one, we don't value that it is the voice of the Lord. Two, our flesh is weak and we get lazy. Three, we think, it could be, again, just bad teaching. We think that maybe just because he said it, it's already done, and that's it. I can just sit back, kick back, and relax, and here we go. So
I feel like that is the last one is the large majority of people, because I run into so many people and they're like, well, I don't know how it's going to happen, but God's just going to do it, which is a very common thing. Yeah, there's a lot of ways we don't know how it's going to happen, but the application of what we're required to do is a major stumbling block for a lot of people. So in saying that, what are some of the practical steps that you recommend or instruct other people when it comes to stewarding prophetic words?
Yeah, I do this, whether it's dream, because that's just another avenue the Lord sends prophetic words. It's just a vehicle that he uses. So whether it's dreams, whether it's, a word of, a word that's released over someone, first thing to do, man, first thing I do, and maybe it's not the first thing everybody does, but the first thing I do, or I teach people to do, is record it, write it down, write it down. In this day and age, again, this shows the I just want to say it shows the laziness of us. Is there's no excuse right now to be writing things down, especially with these things right here. I can sit there and hit voice record, and from what just happened to me or what I just received, I've got notes and notes and notes in here of things that I felt that came through unction of the Holy Spirit that I've just jotted down to mine out later. But in that moment, I valued that unction was from him. And so, number one, write it down. The blueprints of the tabernacle came from writing it down. How could Solomon build what David had in his heart to build for the Lord, the house of the Lord, without David first writing down the blueprints and for him to run with? And it talks about it in Chronicles that he gained understanding by writing all these things down. Daniel wrote the contents of the dream down. Jeremiah, I mean, this is where's it? Jeremiah 36. I believe it's in Jeremiah 36 and somewhere around verse 2. The Lord instructs Jeremiah to go get a scroll and write on it all the words. Listen to this, man. All the words that have been spoken to him concerning Israel and concerning Judah up until that time. And he says, do it from the first time I spoken to you, and he gives a time frame from the days of Josiah even unto this day. So this blew my mind, out when we teach on this stuff. I was like, that's about a 22, 23 year time frame of prophetic words that Jeremiah is having to go back. And he gets an assistant to come and help him write these things down. But he has to come up with words that have been released for over a 20-year process, and then write these things down in a scroll for those to run with it. So again, write it down is number one. And then here's what I do after that. After we write it down, because you've got to test it. You've got to test it. The next thing I would say, write it, test it. Many people may flip those two things, and that's fine, whatever your process is. Once you know his voice, and you because it says his sheep know his voice, right? And so once you know his voice, when he's speaking to you. Others that are just learning or just coming in to discerning and hearing, still write it down. Write it down, and then from that point, test it, discern it. Even for the mature, I still say, write it down and then test it and discern it. Does it line up with the scriptures? Does it line up with the character? If it doesn't line up with the scriptures, because you're not going to see in there, Jason, go marry this person, right? So does it line up with the character and nature of Jesus? Does it line up with the character and nature of Jesus? Is it conforming me more to his image? Is it bringing me, is it redemptive in nature? Is it bringing me back to the Father? Those type of things. If those things line up and you can marry the gift with the fruit of the Spirit, then you can pretty much bank on it. This is something to start laboring with. Now, if you write things down and you check it with, other mature prophetic voices, that would be another thing I would add. After writing it down and you've tested it privately, take it to a company. Don't be, there's no darkness in this thing. You shouldn't be afraid to share necessarily what you're getting with some mature believers, unless there's maybe a selfish motive deep in there. And it's like, I need to hang on to this thing. And that's a whole nother teaching stuff, I guess. But be open to get some counsel on it. Share it with some mature prophetic voices in your life, and they'll be able to tell you. They'll be able to say, yeah, this lines up. Let's agree with you in this. And now you've got wisdom in a multitude of counselors. You've written it down, so you have a record of it. You've discerned that it is from the Holy Spirit, that it is the voice of the Father speaking. And if you know that, and you know the promises, and it lines up with that, now you've got actually there should be a measure of faith that rises up to actually start contending with this word, and not just setting it up on a shelf like we've done in the past.
So what does contending actually look like?
Yeah. Contending takes that word and starts praying it. I mean, that's where we go back to making that memorial, filling up that bowl in heaven concerning those things. And so it means just practically it's reading the word back to him as if I'm having a conversation with my Father. If my Father in the natural told me something saying, Jason, I want you to be just, baseball player or something. Let's just do something practical here. Baseball player. Okay, Lord, or okay, Dad, that's cool. Tell me about that. You said you want me to be a baseball player. What do I need to do? And so I'm having this conversation in the natural with my dad. Well, here, let me equip you with this. Here's a glove. Here's this. And then here's some coaching. Here's training. And so over this process, this thing starts to come to maturity, right? So how do you contend with it? You have dialogue back with the one that sent it. You have communication back with the one that sent it to you. And that's contending with it. And what happened, and here's where the contending actually comes in, is when things that come to wage war against it. This is an easy one to I guess pick on, or something with finances. Say somebody releases a word about financial blessing or something like that. Number one, are you flowing in the biblical principles for, tithes and offerings and all that good stuff? So yes, we're assuming that's happening. Number two, shortly after receiving that word, more than likely the enemy is going to come try to wage war against that word. It talks about the parable of the sowers. When the seed is sown, what happens? The enemy will try to come and rob that seed. And so what happens when a prophetic word comes out, like, again, for the sake of this illustration, the financial blessing, not all the time, but most time, there's probably going to be some type of warfare in the finances. Something may break down, something may, something unexpected may come up, and it's just like, are you kidding me right now? You just said, Lord, that I was going to do this. Look at the situation with Abraham and Sarah. The word was that you're going to be a father of many nations, and through you, I'm going to bless all the families of the earth. Yet that didn't line up necessarily with his current situation, with him being, 90 plus years old. And so, and his wife as well. Right. So, contending is keeping a measure of faith over the word. It's when anything that's contrary to the word comes at it, you don't agree with what's contrary. You agree with what the Lord has spoken. And so that's kind of how contending looks like. And here's the other thing is, with those that you have shared it with, bring them in on it. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, he's in the midst. And so one puts 1,000 to flight, 2, 10,000. And so you've got some co-laborers with you in prayer, and that's how you can help contend more effectively. You're not just doing it on your own.
These principles, okay, we have someone guest speaker, and he or she gives a prophetic word to the house or to an individual. We apply these principles to that, and we learn how to steward it. We learn how to contend. We learn how to do all these things. Are they the same kind of principles if it comes in a manner not like that? In other words, it comes in the form of a dream or a vision. I have a dream or a vision. Do I steward those dreams and visions in the same manner?
For me personally, I do, because again, I think dreams come through the image center and through the spirit there. It's still the voice of God through a vessel of man, just like it would be in a service or a gathering where somebody prophesies through edification, exhortation, comfort, chastisement, rebuke, whatever. And so even with those things, I'm going to go write those down. When I get a dream, when I get, a vision, whatever, those things are prophetic in nature, and so I'm definitely writing those down. And that's a whole nother process of the dream thing, how to steward those things. But it's
Well,
write it down, test it, and go from there. So
the reason I asked that is you said that. I love what you said right there. The dreams and vision are prophetic in nature, because where I was going with my next thought process was, you have Joseph who has a dream, but it would be 13 years before it came to pass. You have Isaiah who prophesies about the Messiah, a lamb slain. It would be over 600 years before it ever came to pass. I feel like in our current prophetic climate, we have conditioned ourselves for right now fulfillments. Yeah. And we're using it as a marker to determine whether or not someone is a genuine prophet or a false prophet. How big of a factor is time concerning prophetic words and stewarding those prophetic words?
Time. Going back to the dream thing first, I said they're prophetic in nature. Dreams from the Lord are prophetic in nature. I just want to make that clear for everybody freaks out on there, like, oh my God, every dream. No. There's soulish realm dreams. There's dreams that are sinister, soulish, and dreams from the spirit. So let's make sure that was clear right there. I could hear the chatter already, like, oh my God, no, dreams from the Lord are prophetic in nature. The rest of them, they're soulish realm or sinister in nature.
Wait a minute. Are you saying I'm not going to take over the world?
No, Pinky, not tonight. No. But these, when, let me think of how to say it. Timing. It says like apples and a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. A word rightly spoken or fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. And so a word in season is another way of how it translated. So you can have the right word, but you can have the wrong timing of those things. And it's super huge. Let's address the first thing here. We live in an instant culture. We want things, even the microwave, we're sitting there getting mad at it because it's taken 2 minutes to heat something up, right? So it's just like quicker, come at me. We want microwave prophecies, something that heats up super quick and boom, it's hot, it's ready, it's there. But those things aren't really the most beneficial things for us, are they? So here's the other thing. That's usually not all the time, but that there is an element of that is somewhat selfish in nature or limited foresight. Meaning if a word comes to me, it's it's given to me, but what if it's not for me? What if it's actually going to be answered through the generations coming after me? What if I'm just supposed to be the kind of the keeper of it? Again, he's a generational God. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And so Abraham received the promise in a measure, but he didn't see the fullness of that promise until generations later, right?
Yeah.
So some things the Lord may promise you in one generation, and it's truly a prophetic word, but you don't see the fulfillment of it until generations later on, right? And so that's why it's important to steward these things well and pass and be okay that, hey, maybe this thing's not about necessarily completely me, but I'm just the steward. I'm not the source, I'm the steward. And so timing is super key to understanding these things, because again, as soon as we get something, man, we want that thing right now. Like you said, Joseph got the dream and saw the sheaves bowing down, and it was a 13-year process before Joseph actually got to the point where the fulfillment of the dream was. If he just thought, me personally, I don't, this is just me. This is just my take on it. I know Joseph was favored. I know all of those things, but what if there was something in Joseph that wasn't quite ready yet? And he would not have been able, in that state that he was in when he first got the dream, to be able to have the maturity and the fortitude necessarily to be able to release forgiveness to his brothers, you know, and so he had to go through this season of process so that on the other side of it, when the thing came, he was able to sustain not just one nation, but two. And so oftentimes we'll learn more in the process than we do with the actual fulfillment. And so that's that thing where I talked about being more conformed to his image. I could just imagine the whole scenario with Joseph. Hey, look, I've got my father's favor. Here's my coat going around. I'm getting dreams and visions left and right. I'm seeing you bow down to me. You know, there's an element that could be walking around in pride there, you know, and we don't know that right now, but that there's an element that he could have been walking around that and go and share that and it come off prideful. And the Lord's, like, okay, well, now you're going to have to go through some extra process to get that out of you, because otherwise when people wrong you, you'll still hold back and you won't, instead of giving out, so timing is definitely key. If I release the right word in the wrong season, I can frustrate the grace, and put people under a unnecessary burden. So again, say there's a word, again, let's go back to the nations thing, and I'm going to release a prophetic word over somebody concerning going to the nations or whatever. And if I haven't tested that word, and this happens as a minister, this can happen like instantly. You're weighing the options, you're weighing the thing, and you're receiving. Just because you're receiving doesn't mean you should be releasing, from a prophetic ministry standpoint. You've got to test it, weigh it, and see. But if I release a word over somebody and I haven't, and it's not been processed, or I haven't been processed in the midst, and I'm not recognizing the timing of it, I put that on them, and maybe they're not in a mature state yet, or they're not in a state where they're able to receive it, and they go off and make a shipwreck of their faith in that moment because the Lord's still working on the characters. It can put an unnecessary burden on them, thinking that they have to fulfill that. They have to fulfill it right then and there. And timing is just huge. You've heard right the right word at the wrong time is still the wrong word, type of thing. So
you're saying something there that's intriguing me about the process and the fulfillment. I think a lot of individuals, the fulfillment is always the goal. But if we don't grow through the process, does the fulfillment carry as much value? Here's what I'm going to ask. When God gives, let's say, a conditional prophetic word and we're contending for that. We're cultivating, we're stewarding it, we're going after, quote unquote, the fulfillment. Could it be that part of that conditional aspect is that he's really trying to get us to the goal of growth through the process, and the fulfillment itself isn't really the goal? Because at the end of the day, here's what I'm saying this in. The fulfillment is to bring him glory, but the process is really about us, which does give him glory, but the fulfillment really isn't about us. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, going back to the whole Joseph principle, he finally figured it. I think it's in Psalms there. He talks about, he sent me ahead of you. The Lord sent me ahead of you on those things. And so it's definitely about the fulfillment gives the Lord the glory. The process conforms us more to his image. The process conforms us more to his image. And that's it. That's the thing. And ultimately in that process, I'm presenting my body as that living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto the Lord. I'm yielding my members as a slave to righteousness in the midst of this process. My mind, my ears, my hands, my feet, my spirit, my imagination. I'm yielding all those things to him in that process. So ultimately, I can be more conformed to his image. It's that whole potter and clay thing, man, that he's shaping us and conforming us. And that word, that's what that word is. My word, not like a fire, right? And so that word is burning things up in us that don't need to be there. And it's revealing his nature while it's burning my nature up. So that's definitely it. That's definitely part of the process there is the ultimate fulfillment. He gets the glory, and the process is conforming to his image, which again, he gets the glory.
So as we are stewarding prophetic words, we are actually removing more of ourself in order to make room for him in everything that we're doing. And that now seems like that can easily be why we become lazy, why we become intolerant, or we become apathetic towards the fulfillment of prophetic words. So that's just kind of giving me new perception on some of this stuff.
Yeah, man. We love, let me say it this way. We love um we love receiving prophetic words. We don't love the responsibility of the prophetic word. And so we love because there is, man, there's a level of ecstasy, joy, and all those things that happen in that moment when receiving a prophetic word or a minister releases something over you, whatever. And we love that, I don't know how to, kind of that high feeling in that moment, and we get addicted to that thing. And this is what happens where you see, I hate this term, but you see like prophetic junkies that go from prophetic word to prophetic word and prophetic conference to prophetic conference, because they're having to live from that prophetic high to prophetic high because they're not willing to actually cultivate the prophetic word. They're not willing. I remember one time, and it's been here just a little bit ago. I'm like, hold up on the prophetic word. I'm not despising prophecy, but man, hold up. The last thing I need right now is another prophetic word. I'm doing well trying to steward the things from the past few seasons and even the past years. Those things will crush you under the weight of that when it's a real word, when it's an authentic word. Again, there's a weight that comes to it, and there's a weight of responsibility that we co-labor with him as I'm being conformed to him, and we don't like that. And so the easiest thing to do is let me go get a prophetic word. Oh, that was awesome. 2 weeks later, where's the next conference? 2 weeks later, where's the next, Facebook prophet? 2 weeks later, where's the next, altar line I can get in or whatever. And what we start doing is we start getting dependent on those moments, because there's a level of affirmation and there's a level of things that we feel and the excitement and the experience and all that. But the next part of that, man, is the carrying the responsibility of it. And that's where I think we have a lot of improving to do.
Okay, in saying that, I'm someone, and I receive a quote unquote prophetic word. What are some of the red flags that I need to look for to know, hey, I don't need to, this is simply a word of encouragement, or it's operating solely in the gift of prophecy in the sense of edification, exhortation, and comfort. But it's not something that I need to put in the category of, man, I've got to contend. I got to steward this prophetic word for the fulfillment of that word.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you said it right there, with the exhortation and comfort. Those things usually speak to our present situation and not our future destiny. And the ones that come in that moment, there's almost what would you call it? An inner witness, an inner witness of, like, when you receive that word, that's basically it. You've got the fruit of that word instant, right then. You feel exhorted, you feel comforted, you feel built up, and you're ready to go complete the assignment you're already on. Those I don't have to contend with. It was just it was just a thing, kind of like or somebody that's already running a marathon, and you've seen those people out there with the cups of, Gatorade, electrolytes, or water or whatever. Those things, drink it, enjoy it, and keep running. Those are things I don't have to contend with. The other words come, and again, I think there's a measure of weightiness to it. I think that's one of the ways we can tell is there's nothing that I see in my life at that moment that it's speaking more to my future. It's speaking more to my destiny than my present. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so the ones I'm going to have to contend with, it's usually for more of a future reality or versus a present situation. Not all the time. I don't want to put a whole blanket thing on that, because there's some things, maybe it's a healing, something about a healing. And there's still some things you have to contend for there. But it's an encouraging thing in that moment to keep contending. But most of them, the ones that we know that we'll have to contend with, are ones that speak to a future reality versus my present situation.
One of the things that we've done here, they have collected a lot of the prophetic words. We don't have all of them in a binder form yet. They're still working on it. But we last night at corporate prayer, as we're recording this, it was last night, we got a substantial stack of those words, and we prayed into those words. And we elaborated in the sense of some of the things that had come to pass. Now, so here's a two-part question in this is, speak to the churches that have prophetic words and why it is so important to take those words and do what we did last night. You can elaborate on that. But also in this process, many of those words that were read last night and read over, there was pieces of what was prophesied that had manifested into its fullness. There were other parts, same word, that was near fulfillment. And then there was other parts, same word, that was like, whoa, when is that ever going to be? So you could have this dynamic of one word having pieces of fulfillment, near to fulfillment, and what seems way off of fulfillment. But you still have to we don't define that word, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't define that word fulfilled because one aspect came into fulfillment. We still have to continue to do that. So my two questions are this is, what do you say to the churches and what we did last night, and why is it so important not to give up and prematurely celebrate?
Yeah, for the churches, I'm telling you, this is a, it's a, how would I say it? It's a insertion of life and vitality to the church. And so and there's an increase when we see measures of the prophetic word that has happened. Like you said, this goes back to, again, character, nature of Jesus. He was, he is, and he is to come, right? The kingdom is from everlasting. The kingdom has always been, right? Um, but it also manifested and is still in its fullness, being manifested and will be. So you can see when prophetic words like this come, there's a measure of fulfillment, and that speaks to the faithful witness, that he is faithful and true, right? And so that he's not a man that he should lie, that he's faithful and true, and that he sent forth his word, and that he'll accomplish that and what it was sent out to do. And so when we look back, that's why it's written down. If these things weren't written down, that's not what not have happened, right? And so we were able to look back at there and see how there was a word when we were in our old building, concerning a next step of faith, concerning a new building that was going to be on the horizon and all these things. And so here we are now, fast forward a little bit at the time of that, where we were in a little building behind the Smoky Mountain Knife Works section up here. And so now we're right dead center in the middle of Pigeon Forge in a beautiful campus here. And it took a faith step. It took an act there. And at that time, it was a directive type of thing. That was something they had to contend for, right? They had to contend for because it was not manifested yet. And so as they started contending for it, it was also a leading and saying, this is where I'm taking you. This is where you're going. And when this building came open, it came available, put on the radar, then it's like, hey, we've got a word about a new building. This kind of fits that thing. Let's labor for this thing. And they did, and some supernatural events on funding and everything came about in order to secure this building. So that right there, seeing how that word has already been, a measure of it has been fulfilled, increased our faith to look at the ones that are almost being fulfilled. Like, man, we're right here. It creates like a prophetic timeline, if you will. Yeah, and so it's like, man, we're right here. Chronos is the Greek word for time, like, chronology, chronos. But on that timeline of chronos, there's these kairos moments on this line, and that's these moments, these memorials, these markers of measures of fulfillment that happened. So when the building happened, that was a measure of fulfillment. Looking back now, we're like, oh man, the Lord said this, and here we were, a couple years later, we're actually in it. The next word that's in that same word there, we're right there on the verge of it. So there's an expectancy that rises up in the leadership. There's an expectancy that rises up in the congregation. And there's, like I said, there's a life-giving element that happens for you churches and ministers out there. There's a life-giving element that happens that it brings everybody up. It brings everybody up to this next level of expectancy that wasn't, or maybe it was dormant before. Maybe it had gotten complacent. Maybe it was dormant. Maybe it was just everyday life. But now when we look at that, everything comes up. And you know what that does? That adds fuel for the next phase of the one that has yet to be seen, and there's no signs of it yet. And so that's adding another fuel that's like a fresh fire on the inside for us. Hey, let's keep contending. Let's keep praying these things, not just on our Tuesday night prayers, but now you guys have been equipped with these prophetic words. Pray them every day. Make it part of your devotion. Make it part of your prayer time. So now everybody, literally, the saints have been equipped with these words to contend with, and now you've got a whole mobilization thing that's happened, and the body is it's like Nehemiah's wall. Everybody's got a sword and a trowel, and their families are doing their part on the wall to see this thing established in this region. Come on, I'm about to start preaching. I think I'm just trying to, I'm getting a little stirred up, but that's what happens with it. Is it's just an element, to sum it up, just an element of life that happens when you see these things start manifesting, and then it breeds a new element of life for the next thing.
There's 1,000 different ways that we could go with this particular episode. I mean, it just feels like, we could dig and unearth something and keep digging and keep digging and keep digging. But, for the sake of time and schedules and so on and so forth, what I'm going to do is what I've been doing here lately with a lot of our guests is giving you the opportunity to have the final word, the last word, anything that you want to share concerning stewarding prophetic words. Maybe I didn't ask a question. Maybe there's something on your heart that you wanted to share. Maybe there's nothing and you feel like you've said everything that needed to be said. But what, if you do have something, what is that final statement that you want to share with the listeners?
I'll probably just want to agree and kind of sum things up, man. We talked earlier about the timing, and, when you release the right word in the wrong timing, what happens is you can wear out the saints. You can wear out the saints of the Most High. And that comes from Daniel chapter 7, I believe. And because they start wondering, well, when is this going to happen? Why hasn't this happened? And they get off into all kinds of things, and they start getting in doubt and fear and unbelief. And the whole thing is just miss the mark. So, that could be a whole episode on itself, man, on just timing. Agreeing, I think number one is going back is, let's agree. If you know beyond a shadow of a doubt the word is from the Lord and there's fruit to it, then you've got to come into agreement with it. And just like when the Lord said, the land that I'm giving you is not like the land of Egypt. It's not like the land of Egypt. It's a good land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. There's pomegranates, there's grapes, there's dates, there's all these things in this land. And then when they get there and they send the spies into the land, the spies come back carrying the fruit. And the fruit was a testimony saying, look, this land is just like the Lord has said. It's just like the Lord has said. Now they're at a point to make a decision. Do we go in and possess the land? Do we go, but there's giants, there's enemies, there's all these ites that are in the land. Do we go in and possess what he promised us? Do we go in and possess what he prophesied concerning us? There's an element of fruit with it. And just like Israel there, 10 people disagreed with it. The other 2 agreed with it. And so once you've tested the word that has come to you, and it bears the fruit of the witness of Christ, it bears the fruit of the witness of the scriptures, this is your opportunity to cultivate it now, to come into agreement, cultivate it, and now it's your job to carry the fruit of the responsibility to labor. He's going to release the grace to accomplish it, but you've got to start walking it out. And I go back to the example, if he's called you to go to the nations, then go get a passport. If he's called you to go, do everything in your power and your ability to make the steps necessary. And then he's going to do everything in his power to meet you with it. And you'll see the fulfillment of it. Last thing is, one of the best things that we can do to contend with this, it's an element of warfare. Paul told Timothy to wage the warfare with what? The prophecies that were spoken over him. And so that's why you've got to write these things down. Maybe the Lord sees things down. A good man foresees the evil day and prepares for it. Our Father's a good Father. And so he foresees the evil day. He may warn us about these things, but he may warn us in a season of peace. He may warn us in a season of rest. And so if I don't value that this is the voice of the Lord, and I fail to steward the words rightly, when that season of warfare comes, I may be picking out the wrong weapon for that season of warfare. Maybe I'm supposed to be waging the warfare with the prophecy, and I'm over here doing all these other things and wondering where the victory is, and I'm missing out on the fullness of victory because I'm not using the right weapon. And so we can go back and look at the strategies and look at the prophetic words that he's given us so we can wage the effective warfare. So determine that it's from the Lord, write it down, agree with it, contend with it, check it out with others, get them to agree with you, and then start waging the warfare. Don't just set up on a shelf like a trophy. We've made trophy out of revelation nuggets. We made trophy out of prophecies, and we set them up on this whole shelf up here for other people to look at. And that's where they stay. The enemy would love for prophetic words to stay on the shelf. Let me say it this way. The enemy would love for authentic prophetic words to stay on a believer's shelf instead of a believer actually grabbing hold of them and contending with them until on earth as it is in heaven.
I love it. I love this, and we could go on and on and on. But tell me, first of all, how do people learn, if they go online, how do they learn about Summit Church?
Go to summitchurchtn.com, summitchurchtn.com, and all of our information is there. Again, Sundays at 10:30, Wednesdays at 7, and the first Friday, if you're in on the weekends or traveling, first Friday of every month, we have a worship night at 7 p.m. where we just lavish our love on the Lord. We gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, first Friday of every month, summitchurchtn.com for all that information.
And how do we learn about your ministry?
You can go to remnantvoice.tv, and everything. I've started merging all my places to this one place now, so it's a whole lot easier to find me. But you can go to remnantvoice.tv, and everything that you'll need to know about me, any teachings, messages, or social media stuff, it's all there, remnantvoice.tv.
Last question. Your podcast is exactly called what?
It's called Remnant Voice. Remnant Voice.
Okay, I want to make sure in case somebody was to, search that out online, they would have that, even though they can find that on your website. If they do just a search on that, they'll be able to get that. So again, thank you so much for taking time to be a part of this episode of the Blacksmith Chronicles. It really means a lot to me.
It's always a pleasure, Ron, always.
Until next time, guys, I hope this episode has encouraged you, it has equipped you, and it has challenged you to further advance the kingdom. Until the next time, guys, we love you. Be blessed in the name of Jesus.
Thank you for listening to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast. It is our prayer that this episode challenged you, encouraged you, and equipped you for the advancement of the kingdom of God. For more episodes or ways that you can partner with Ryan Johnson Ministries, please go to www.ryanjohnson.us or email us directly at info@ryanjohnson.us. Please join us again soon for another episode of the Blacksmith Chronicles.